What if everything you thought you knew about the Messiah didn't align with ancient prophecy? Today, we're diving into one of the most debated questions in history. Why do Jews reject Jesus as the Messiah? We'll explore the 10 key reasons rooted in Jewish tradition, from genealogical requirements to the promise of universal peace. Get ready to challenge your perspective as we unpack the complexities of prophecy, theology, and historical context in this fascinating episode. Did the Messiah come to establish peace? Or was it all symbolic? Why hasn't the Holy Temple been rebuilt? These are just some of the controversies we'll tackle. Together, we'll examine why Jewish expectations for the Messiah remain unmet in Jesus' story, and how these arguments shape interfaith discussions today. Whether you're here for the historical insights or the theological debate, this episode promises to ignite your curiosity and deepen your understanding of one of the world's oldest faith divides. Stick around, because this isn't just about history, it's about perspective. By the end of this episode, you'll gain a clear view of the Jewish criteria for the Messiah, the profound questions surrounding Jesus' role, and how these points fuel ongoing debates between Judaism and Christianity. Whether you agree, disagree, or are simply intrigued, this episode is for anyone seeking clarity, context, and a deeper conversation. Let's get started on a journey that promises to challenge your beliefs and broaden your worldview.
What if somebody told you there were like 10 reasons why a whole religion just doesn't believe in like a central figure of another faith? Would you want to know why?
It's a good question.
I think so too.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at today.
Yeah.
The Jewish perspective on Jesus.
Okay.
And why, from a Jewish perspective, he just doesn't fit the bill for messiahs.
Right.
At least according to the sources that we're looking at.
Yeah, and I think it's important to come at this conversation not as like, is this right or wrong, but just like trying to understand like another worldview and another way of looking at things.
Absolutely.
And I think it's really important to understand that the Jewish Messianic expectations, they're really rooted in prophecies and interpretations of the Tanach.
For sure.
The Jewish Bible.
Yeah, and what I find really fascinating is that even within Judaism, there are tons of different interpretations of how literally or metaphorically to take these criteria.
For sure.
So there's a lot of room for debate.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump into the first reason.
Okay.
Genealogy. Our source cites Genesis 49:60 and other verses that talk about how important the Messiah's lineage is.
These verses are pointing to a prophecy about like the scepter not departing from Judah. And so this is all like a prophecy about the Messiah coming from the line of King David.
Interesting.
And King Solomon. And so in Jewish history, these kings, they represent like a golden age of leadership, you know, and they're kind of like a blueprint for the ideal king.
So it's not just about being a descendant, it's about embodying those qualities.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like the model for future kingship.
So the source is pointing out that Jesus's lineage, at least in the Christian tradition, poses a problem.
Yeah, and that's because the idea of a virgin birth, which is very central to Christian belief, that clashes with the Jewish understanding of lineage.
Okay.
Which is traced patrilineally.
So through the father.
Through the father, exactly. And so if Jesus's father isn't Joseph, then that kind of disrupts the direct Davidic line. Right? It's like someone trying to claim the throne based on their mother's side of the family when the rules are like, no, it has to be from your dad.
Right, exactly.
Okay, on to the second reason.
Okay.
The Messiah as a political and military leader.
Right.
Now, I think a lot of people have this picture of a conquering hero who's going to liberate the Jewish people.
Yeah, I think that's definitely out there, that kind of like a very simple, maybe even simplistic understanding of what the Messiah would be.
Right.
But it's a little more nuanced than that. It's really about restoring Jewish sovereignty, potentially through different means.
Okay.
And I think that's what leads to like a very crucial distinction between this expectation of the Messiah and a lot of Jesus's teachings.
Interesting.
Because Jesus emphasized love and forgiveness and, you know, turning the other cheek.
Right.
Which is not exactly like the, you know.
Yeah, not exactly charging into battle.
Yeah, not exactly like the, you know, the image of a military general.
Right.
So there's a big difference there.
It feels like there are two different interpretations of the word kingdom at play here.
Yeah.
One that's earthly, focused on like political power, and then the other one's more spiritual.
Right.
A different kind of dominion.
Exactly.
Okay. The source then moves on to the ingathering of exiles is the third reason.
Okay.
And this one I think is particularly relevant.
Yes.
Considering that modern Israel exists.
Absolutely. And, you know, this establishment of a Jewish state in the land of Israel after, you know, centuries of exile has sparked so much debate within Jewish thought.
Right.
Because the question is, does this event fulfill the prophecy even without a Messiah in the traditional sense? Or does it require that we kind of reinterpret what ingathering truly means in a modern context?
Yeah, it brings up this question of, can a prophecy be fulfilled partially
Right.
or in stages?
That's right.
Okay, that leads us to the fourth reason,
Okay.
which is really closely tied to the previous one,
Yes.
rebuilding the temple.
Got it.
Now, for those who may not know, what does the temple symbolize in Judaism?
Right. So the temple in Jerusalem, it was so much more than just a building. It was like the physical embodiment of God's presence on earth.
Wow.
And it was the center of Jewish worship for centuries.
Okay.
And its destruction by the Romans was a monumental loss.
Right.
And its rebuilding is seen as like a key sign of the Messianic age.
So we're not just talking about bricks and mortar.
No.
This is a restoration of something deeply spiritual.
Absolutely.
So is this rebuilding meant to be a literal physical event?
Okay.
Or could it also be interpreted symbolically?
That's a great question. And there are definitely interpretations that lean towards like the symbolic, the idea of like a spiritual rebuilding,
Okay.
a renewal of faith and connection to God.
I see.
And this ties into like the broader concept of what the Messianic age represents,
Okay.
which is like this ideal time of peace and, redemption.
All right. So the fifth reason
Okay.
focuses on something that seems very universal,
Okay.
worldwide peace.
Worldwide peace, yeah.
Has any leader ever actually achieved this?
It's a good question.
It feels like a utopian ideal,
It does.
like almost impossible to fully achieve.
Yeah, and I think that maybe what this is pointing to is that the Messianic age is more of a process, a gradual striving towards peace rather than like a sudden absolute arrival.
Instead of a sudden shift, it's like this incremental progress, a
Exactly.
slow but steady movement towards a better world.
And it really challenges us to think about how we contribute to that progress, even if we don't see like immediate sweeping changes.
Right. It's a call to action.
It is.
Okay, so speaking of ideals,
Okay.
the sixth reason might surprise some people.
Right.
Torah observance.
Okay.
Now, Jesus was Jewish and followed the Torah right.
That's right. He did.
But our source points out that a key aspect of the Messiah is uniting all Jews under one interpretation and practice of the Torah.
Exactly. So while Jesus lived as a Jew within like the Torah's framework, his teachings led to different interpretations of the Torah, which is part of what distinguishes Christianity from Judaism.
It's not simply about believing in the same God, but about how that belief is expressed.
Yeah, exactly. And how the law is interpreted and practiced.
And how the law is interpreted and practiced.
Yeah.
Like there's so many layers to this.
So this brings up some interesting questions about religious unity and diversity.
It does.
It seems to challenge the idea that believing in the same God means we all have to worship in the same way.
Right.
Okay, the seventh reason kind of builds on this, focusing on the universal knowledge of God.
Right. And this really gets at like a key point of tension in interfaith dialogue.
Okay.
Because the Messianic vision within Judaism often leans towards this future where everyone acknowledges and serves like the one God.
Yeah.
However, we currently live in a world of religious pluralism,
For sure.
with like diverse ways of understanding and relating to the divine.
So while the Messianic vision might be pointing towards this ultimate unity,
The reality is much more complex,
it is.
with tons of different beliefs and practices coexisting.
Yeah, and I think this is, it's really a challenge to think about.
What stands out to you about these first 7 reasons?
I think what's crucial is that we don't view these reasons as simply checking boxes. It's not just about like, okay, does this person fit this criteria or not?
Got it.
We really need to see them as these like interconnected threads woven into like the fabric of Jewish belief and history.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's not a checklist. It's about understanding how all these ideas relate to each other
Exactly.
and kind of paint a bigger picture.
That's right.
But we've still got 3 more reasons to unpack.
We do.
And those, I think, delve into even deeper theological territory.
Oh, yeah. We're going to get into some really interesting stuff.
Please buckle up, everybody.
Okay, so let's dive into reason number 8,
Okay.
which tackles a pretty profound concept,
Okay.
the resurrection of the dead. And this is another one of those points that really highlights like a fundamental difference between Jewish and Christian views of like the afterlife.
Yeah, I'm curious about how the Jewish concept of resurrection differs from the Christian understanding,
Okay, yeah.
because it seems to tie into this bigger question of what happens after we die.
Right. So in like traditional Jewish thought, Resurrection refers to the physical revival of the dead during the Messianic era. And this contrasts with the Christian belief in an immediate afterlife,
Okay.
where the soul is judged
Right.
and sent to either heaven or hell.
So it's not just about souls existing in some spiritual realm.
Right.
It's about a transformation of the physical world itself,
Yeah,
with bodies being resurrected here on earth.
That's right.
And if that hasn't happened yet, well, that's another point against Jesus fulfilling this particular messianic expectation.
Precisely. The Messianic age in this context is about like a complete renewal of existence,
Okay.
both physical and spiritual. And this ties into the 9th reason, which is that the Messianic era hasn't been established.
Right. Where's the utopia we were promised?
Exactly. Like if the Messiah has already come, shouldn't we be living in a world of peace and justice?
Right.
And, obviously we're not.
Clearly not.
So this expectation often like bumps up against the reality of, ongoing suffering and conflict.
Yeah.
However, there's this concept within Jewish thought that the Messianic age might not like arrive all at once,
Okay.
but rather like unfolds gradually,
Mhm.
perhaps even spanning generations.
So instead of a sudden dramatic shift, it's about
Yeah,
incremental progress.
that's a great way to put it.
This slow but steady movement towards a better world.
And it really challenges us to think about how we contribute to that progress.
Right.
Even if we don't see like immediate sweeping changes.
Right. It's less about sitting back and waiting for it to happen.
Yeah.
And more about
It is
taking action ourselves.
Exactly. It's a call to action.
It's fascinating how these seemingly abstract concepts can have such tangible implications for how we live our lives.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the 10th and final reason I think really gets to the heart of the theological difference between Judaism and Christianity.
Okay.
The divinity of the Messiah.
Right. And this is really like the crux of the matter.
Okay.
Because for Jews, the Messiah is a human leader chosen by God,
Okay.
but still fundamentally human.
Got it.
And the idea of a divine Messiah that directly contradicts the core Jewish belief in one God with no partners, no sons, no equals.
So it's not just about actions or lineage.
Right.
It's about the very essence of who the Messiah us.
Exactly.
And from a Jewish perspective, that essence is rooted in humanity,
Yes.
not divinity.
And I think this distinction really underpins a lot of the other reasons that we've been talking about.
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of foundational to
It is.
all of it.
It is.
The Messiah, as understood in Judaism, is meant to be like a model for human behavior,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
living a life in accordance with God's will.
That's right.
And that model only works if the Messiah is someone relatable,
Exactly.
someone who faces similar challenges,
Right.
navigates the complexities of human existence.
Yeah, it makes the Messiah's achievements and therefore, like, the possibility of achieving a messianic age feel more attainable.
More inspiring.
More inspiring, yeah.
It suggests that we as humans have a role to play in bringing out that better world.
Exactly. We're not just waiting for someone to come and save us.
Right.
We are active participants.
But our source also mentions other figures throughout Jewish history who were considered potential messiahs.
That's right, like Bar Kokhba,
Okay.
who led a revolt against the Romans in the 2nd century.
Okay.
And he achieved significant military victories.
Mm.
But ultimately, the revolt was crushed.
Right.
And he didn't usher in an era of lasting peace and redemption.
So it's not just about initial success or charisma. It's about achieving ultimate victory and creating lasting change.
And this example really highlights like the high bar that's set for messianic recognition.
It also makes me think about how we as individuals and as societies evaluate leaders and movements.
It does.
Are we looking for quick fixes and dramatic victories?
Mm.
Or are we willing to engage in the long, arduous work of creating meaningful and lasting change?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
And I think that's something for all of us to reflect on, regardless of our backgrounds or beliefs.
Absolutely. So this brings us back to the question of modern Israel
Okay.
and its potential role in fulfilling these messianic expectations.
Right, because the establishment of a Jewish state after centuries of exile, it's undoubtedly like a significant event in Jewish history.
For sure.
But does it represent a fulfillment of prophecy in a modern context? Or does it require us to like reinterpret those ancient prophecies through a different lens?
It's like history itself is forcing us to grapple with these age-old beliefs
It is.
and adapt them to a changing world.
Right.
But then how much reinterpretation is possible?
Right.
How much can these concepts evolve
Yep.
before they lose their original meaning and significance?
It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
It is.
Between honoring tradition and embracing evolution.
Right.
finding ways to make ancient wisdom relevant
Yeah.
to contemporary challenges.
And that, I think, is at the heart of any meaningful interfaith dialogue.
It is.
Can Jesus be a Messiah for Christians
Right.
while not fulfilling that role within Judaism?
And that's a question that often leads to like a lot of tension and disagreement,
Right.
particularly if it's approached from this perspective of exclusivity,
Yeah.
where only one interpretation can be valid.
Right. It has to be one or the other.
Right.
But what if we shifted the goal from proving who's right
Okay.
to exploring the richness and complexity of different perspectives?
That's the key, I think.
Yeah.
It's about approaching the conversation with the spirit of curiosity and understanding,
Okay.
seeking common ground and shared values rather than just focusing on the points of contradiction.
What if these seemingly contradictory beliefs could coexist, each offering a unique and valuable perspective on a larger, multifaceted truth?
I love that idea.
Me too.
Embracing like the multiplicity of interpretations
Yeah.
instead of trying to like force them into a single narrow box.
Because it recognizes that our individual perspectives, while valid and meaningful,
Right.
are inherently limited.
Yeah.
And by engaging with other viewpoints,
Yeah.
we expand our understanding of the world of each other and even of the divine.
That's the power of interfaith dialogue.
It is.
It's not about erasing differences or
Yeah.
claiming superiority.
Yeah.
It's about finding connection and building bridges of understanding.
Across those differences.
I trust those differences.
And who knows, maybe through these conversations, we can start to heal some of the divides that have separated us for far too long.
Like a beautiful thought.
Maybe that's a truly messianic goal worth striving for, not just in the context of religion, but in all aspects of human interaction. So we've explored these like 10 reasons, this tapestry of beliefs, and it feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
I know, right?
Like we could go on for hours talking about this stuff.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of engaging with these kinds of questions, It's not about finding like definitive answers.
Right.
It's about sparking deeper thinking and encouraging ongoing exploration.
I think it's easy to get caught up in trying to prove who's right or wrong.
It is.
Ultimately, isn't the goal understanding a different perspective,
Yeah.
understanding the nuances of faith, understanding the complexities of history?
And perhaps even understanding ourselves.
Oh, that's a good one.
How do these beliefs, these interpretations resonate with our own experiences and values? What can we learn from them, even if we don't personally subscribe to them?
Yeah, I think it's so easy to stay within our own echo chambers,
It is.
surrounded by people who think and believe just like us.
Yeah,
But stepping outside of that comfort zone,
for sure.
engaging with different perspectives, that's where real growth happens.
It is. It's where we challenge our assumptions,
Right.
broaden our horizon, and maybe even discover some like unexpected common ground.
Totally. And we start to see the world
Yeah,
and each other
for sure.
with more nuance and compassion.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, aren't we all searching for something?
But yeah?
Meaning, purpose, connection, a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Maybe those shared desires can bridge the gaps that seem to separate us.
Maybe even if our paths differ, even if our beliefs diverge, we can find inspiration in each other's journeys.
Yeah.
We can recognize that shared humanity
Right.
that underlies those differences.
Maybe that's the true essence of, like, the Messianic ideal.
It could be.
Not a single person or a specific event,
Right.
but like a collective striving towards a better world.
Yeah.
A world where peace isn't just a dream, but a shared goal.
A world where justice prevails, where knowledge flourishes, and where every individual feels valued and respected.
Regardless of what we call it, the Messianic age, or simply a better future, the responsibility to create it rests with each of us.
It does.
So what does your definition of Messiah look like? What actions, big or small, can you take to bring those Messianic ideals into your own life, your own community?
Because ultimately, the power to change the world doesn't reside in some distant prophecy.
Right.
It resides within each of us,
Yeah.
in the choices we make, the actions we take, and the ways we connect with each other.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
It is.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation.
It has.
And I hope it encourages everyone listening to continue the conversation, to seek out diverse perspectives, and to just embrace the richness and complexity of the human experience.
I think the more we understand each other, the closer we get to understanding ourselves.
That's beautiful.
And who knows, maybe that's the first step towards building that better world that we all long for.
Maybe it is. Thanks for listening, everybody.
As we conclude today's episode, let's revisit the 10 reasons why Jews reject Jesus as the Messiah. each rooted deeply in Jewish tradition. First, the Messiah must be a descendant of King David and King Solomon through the father's line, a requirement Jesus doesn't meet due to the claim of a virgin birth. Secondly, the Messiah is expected to be a political and military leader, restoring Jewish sovereignty and defeating Israel's enemies, something clearly absent from Jesus' mission. Next, the Messiah must gather all Jewish exiles and return them to Israel, as prophesied in the Tanach. This ingathering of the Jewish diaspora has yet to happen. Additionally, the rebuilding of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, a cornerstone of Messianic prophecy, remains incomplete. These literal and tangible expectations are fundamental to Jewish belief, leaving no room for reinterpretation in these areas. Another critical prophecy is the establishment of worldwide peace, an era where war is abolished and harmony reigns across nations. Far from this vision, the world has seen conflict persist and even intensify since Jesus' time. The Messiah is also expected to lead all Jews in observing the Torah fully, yet this has not occurred. Instead, divisions within religious practices have grown, contradicting the unifying role of the Messiah. Prophecies also state that the Messiah will usher in universal knowledge of God, where all people acknowledge and serve one true deity. Today's religious pluralism directly challenges this prophecy's fulfillment. Moreover, the resurrection of the dead, a significant event tied to the Messianic era, remains an unfulfilled promise. For Jews, these missing elements underline why the Messianic era has not yet been established. Lastly, Judaism rejects the notion of the Messiah being divine. The Jewish Messiah is a human leader, not a figure of worship. Jesus' portrayal in Christianity as both divine and the Son of God contradicts this deeply held belief. Together, these 10 reasons provide a comprehensive framework for why Jesus is not recognized as the Messiah in Jewish thought. Each point challenges us to reconsider how prophecy and messianic expectations are understood. Now, here's the big question. If the Messiah hasn't fulfilled these prophecies, can he still be the Messiah? For Christians, does the spiritual interpretation of these prophecies outweigh their literal fulfillment? We want to hear your thoughts. Which of these points resonates with you the most? Which challenges your beliefs? Share your perspective in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and join us for more thought-provoking discussions. We want to hear from you. Which of these 10 points challenges your perspective the most? Do you believe they're definitive? Or do you think there's room for reinterpretation? Drop a comment below and join the conversation. Your voice matters here. If you found today's discussion thought-provoking, hit that like button, share this video with someone who loves a good debate, and let's keep this dialogue alive. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive into topics that question, provoke, and inspire. This is just the beginning of an ongoing exploration into faith, history, and belief. Until next time, remember, the best way to understand your own faith is to ask the hardest questions. Keep questioning, keep learning, and let's keep the conversation going.